Hello everyone, Marco here. Thanks for joining. Today's March 10th and we're going to look at some new and updated features that have been put into the VeADIR beta platform. The base version of this particular beta release is from February 26th, although some new features were added, so I wanted to cover those off today. So let's get started. One of the changes is probably more pertinent to the beta testers than anybody. The welcome splash screen that comes up, a little pop-up. This has been modified to bring up reports or enable the beta user, to bring up reports from some of the previous versions, February 2nd and 26th in particular, the ones that were closed on those dates for exposures and rental offers, as well as rent exposures. Okay, next thing we want to look at then is the portfolio screen. Astute observers will notice, and for those who've been following closely, the VeADIR portfolio has expanded. Previously it was four or five tokens in the field of opportunities for the VeADIR to potentially purchase. Recently the number of reports per Reggie has been expanded to 20 within the VeADIR that's been fed to the VeADIR. And of the 20 total opportunities the VeADIR can act on, apparently 9 of them now are in a buy range for the VeADIR. And so the other 11 then presumably are not yet in a buy range. Just some, I guess, other, not really changes, but just usage updates. There are now 45 exposures open that have been open in aggregate over the last 30 days. Average exposure ROI about 4.5% during those 30 days, which is really not that bad given the downdraft, heavy downdraft in the market that we've seen. And a total US dollar value volume that has gone through the VeADIR platform of 53,000 and change. Current value of the 9 assets within the portfolio is 48,600 and change. And then the delta difference between those two values would be the closed out exposures. No change over here on the right. We see the VeADIR latest trades. A new bucket was just created 13 hours ago, has not been filled yet, appears. And just some of the recent tokens. Looks like most recently the VeADIR is focusing on purchasing PayPi tokens, which have been a great performer most recently. They were beat down pretty hard and they're holding up real well. Okay, let's go ahead then and go over to sort of the meat of the updates, and that would be on the exposure page for already opened exposures. You'll note here that I've got 2, and if you've seen the previous video, you'll know I closed out this particular exposure during that video. Actually closed it out early, and it is still in the process of closing. This is an issue that's been reported. You'll see here what happened with this particular exposure on the informational tab here among the exposure page. I'll just go over all of these tabs, one of which is new, but they're all relatively new. So the currency I opened this particular exposure in was Ethereum. The exposed value was $869 when I opened that particular exposure. You'll see up at the top current value 582, and we'll see that the return on that value is minus 15% in ETH terms, or minus 33% in US dollar terms. The fee to open that exposure, which is approximately, give or take, but targeted around 5% of the exposure value, and the period of the exposure was originally March 3rd, 2018 through Feb 7th, 2117, a 99-year exposure. I did close that early after only 2 days, as you see here. March 4th was when I initiated the closing procedure on that. Just as a brief sidetrack, the way I did initiate closing that exposure early, select the 3 dots on an open exposure, click close exposure, and follow through the instructions and MetaMask submission. So back to the closure or the exposure that I closed or is in closing. If we come over here to the performance tab, we will see the original value in Ethereum, current value and the change, Ethereum to US dollar amount, the change there, and then the value in USD and the change there. And you will note, if I come up here to the main menu and change my currency, let's say to Japanese yen, we can get updated values for Japanese yen, including the current return in JPY currency. So I'll go ahead and go back to USD and stay with that. Third tab over on the exposure pane is actually a new tab. What we see on this tab, this one is actually submitted by at least one person, myself. Others may have submitted this idea as well. And the request was to be able to view the assets within a particular bucket. And so that's what we're seeing here. Briefly, I'll go to the one that's still fully open. And we can see here that these are the list of assets within this particular exposure bucket. So when the capability is implemented soon to take delivery, I could indeed, if I wanted, take delivery, close this exposure early, or if it were an exposure with a shorter duration, let it expire naturally upon its duration end, and then go through the settlement process and request these tokens. For this particular case, I just initiated closing, and if we go back to the informational screen briefly, we know that that happened on March 4th. Today is, what is today? The 10th, so about 6 days ago. And there is some sort of issue within the VeADIR where it has not closed out this particular exposure, primarily due, I would guess, to this item right here. For some reason it was unable to dispose of or sell the PPT within the bucket. All of the other tokens were sold that were in here. You'll note that the Ethereum value is 0.8. If we come back to the original, it was 869 USD. If I wanted to see the Ethereum value of that, so when I opened it, it was worth just over 1.005 Ethereum, which at the time was worth 869.48. So coming back over here, we'll see once the PPT is sold, the value from that sale will be realized in Ethereum. the VeADIR will then be able to close this bucket out. I'll be able to settle the bucket and collect the Ethereum back into my account associated with my MetaMask. So this is the new tab here. Great feature. Thank you, Reggie and team, for adding that in. This is very good enhancement to the platform to enable us to see what these buckets are looking like inside the bucket itself. And then the last tab over here is just the timeline or history of this particular exposure. We see that it was opened 7 days ago and collected shortly thereafter, and then the next day I initiated closing. As soon as the closing issue is resolved, whatever it is that's causing this remaining asset to not be sold, once that's resolved, this closure will finish out. Then I'll be able to settle the transaction and put the ETH back to work on the platform in a new exposure. So that's it for this video. Just a fairly quick update. Reggie and company are headed to Dubai soon, so good luck to them on their road show. And there's been hints that potentially the platform may be announced, either public beta or even more than that, by the end of the month. So we will hold on tight and see what happens over the next 3 weeks. So thanks again for everyone joining, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.